I'm back, YouTube. My name is Clark. I'm an artist. This is an ongoing series of mine called Into the Blue, where I left off with you guys last time. I had taped off the outlines for this diamond pattern, and now where we're at, I've taped the inside lines and done the color. As I described before, we have a 3-axis grid, and therefore a 3-color pattern can tessellate across the grid without the colors touching each other. So that's what we have here. Pretty straightforward. This is the fun part. Fun part is to pull the tape. Somehow that's really satisfying. I don't really want to get into ASMR videos and process videos. I can pull some of the tape so you guys can see it because we all love that. But that's not really the focus of what I'm doing. I just kind of want to talk about the work and the concepts behind it. One of my co-workers and fellow artists asked me if I like tape, like working with tape, that he knows other artists that work with tape and they hate it. I can sort of see why at some level, but I would hate to think that I've pigeonholed myself into some sort of process that I don't like. There's a lot of ways in which this is the antithesis of expressionism, by all means, or like free expression. It's so entirely rigid and conceptual. There's a level at which it's like a math problem. You can't tell me that this is wrong. There's this weird correctness about it. And certainly not everything I do is so rigid. In fact, some of the things that I love about working with clay, my favorite process in that realm is the pinch process. And there's something really free about that. But for me and for this painting series, it's more about uncovering the different geometries that are inherent to this grid. And so it is kind of rigid and mechanical in that way. And there is a way in which all the work that I make is process driven, and this is just one of those processes. So another thing that comes up is perfectionism. And you know, people might be like, how do you make this so perfect or whatever? And it's not. You know, there's a degree to which this process allows for a certain level of making mistakes. And certainly the inside lines that I taped most recently before putting the paint down is the most tedious of the process. But even that, it's not perfect and there's room for error. You can see these small pieces of tape at the corners. That's where I kind of make up for my mistakes. I don't try and obsess about the corners even being completely perfect, and there is some play in that. This isn't digital, and it doesn't need that kind of precision in my mind. With formal art training, we would get kind of criticism like some of these lines are going to have bleeds, and I might come back with some of the navy background paint and clean up a bleed here and there if it's really pronounced and if it distracts from the rest of it. There are tricks and techniques to prevent bleeds from happening, but I'm not using them. I'm gonna let it bleed, you know, and that's okay. That's fine with me. You know, I don't want to hold myself to some sort of idea of perfectionism. Certainly, if there's one place where being OCD and a little bit rule crazy is warranted or welcome, or however you want to think about it. This is a great place for that. But anybody who's been around someone who's a perfectionist, and I, think about my own upbringing and so on, it's like, it's so overbearing, and one of the biggest lessons in my life and in connection to the concept behind this series, which again is embracing the unknown into the blue, a big part of embracing the unknown is letting go, so I'm not going to hold on to the need for these things to be perfect, and I wouldn't necessarily want them to be, because in a world of AI generated everything, I think we all kind of are hungry for a certain amount of realness. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is being genuine and true to yourself. As an artist, I have a tremendous gift of being able to do this kind of work and source meaning from the discoveries that I make through doing the work, and having self-motivated work that I see from beginning to end, not all the ways that I make money or support myself are this, ideally in the future, this will be it. But I think we all give up parts of ourselves in order to kind of be a part of some other bigger machine. So for me, part of making these videos, making the artwork, thinking about self-promotion is how can I be my own machine. But no, I don't hate working with tape. It becomes a labor and a chore, but then you get to this part, or really the most exciting thing will be to see when all the tape is removed. There's this funny thing that happens when you're working on an artwork, I think every artist experiences, where there's this like underlying fear of fucking it up somehow. And of course, I think that can happen at every stage in the process. There's the potential right now for some of this paint to tear away with the tape. When I'm laying down the paint, a lot of mediums, you're working with or against a drying time. So these are acrylic. The paint dries fairly quickly, and when I set myself up to paint all these lines, then I'm working against that drying time. So I'll give myself enough paint to work with, but not so much that it starts to dry out. If it starts to dry out, it's like rolling paint or other scenarios where some of it becomes like this crusty latex ball and leaves unwanted textures or boogers, or however you want to think about it, in the surface. So those are little things. I think it's just funny to me at some level that there is an underlying anxiety to art making. I think most artists are trying at some level to hide it. I think some are really good at just really letting it all go, and having no worries at all. And of course, as much as I'm talking about letting go, we're sitting here looking at like one of the most constrained kind of images I could create. so the irony there isn't lost on me. What a wild thing. I'm letting go of making the corners perfect, or we're living on the edge like that. But you got to get your kicks somewhere. And another one of my colleagues at the museum, she she almost thought I was like sacrilege, to the extent that I would let little things go or not be bothered about things being completely perfect. But those were some of the lessons I learned in remodeling my house. Like, I tiled the kitchen floor and I made big mistakes that I just live with now. And if the perfectionist part of me ruled, then what, I'm going to be bothered by it every day instead of enjoying all the good things that came out of that result, and knowing that I picked a difficult pattern and executed it as best I could with the knowledge I had. Could I go back and redo it without making those mistakes? Absolutely. But again, it's like I have to accept it. I can't be bothered by it and just live with it. And everybody that sees it is still impacted by it, and they wouldn't know what mistakes I made if I didn't point them out or tell them, And right now I'm taking roller skating lessons. That's something I've been doing for a while. My coach was saying how when you make a mistake at the different steps in roller skating, you're the only one who knows. So, and music is like that too. There's a joke in music that if you make a mistake, just make the same mistake again, and everybody will think it's intentional. So anyhow, that's about it for my rant. I'd love to go on about so many different things that are on my mind, but I think one of the biggest gifts that we have is our uniqueness as individuals, and it's really our duty to be our own unique self. And so part of letting go is letting go of the need to put on a persona in order to impress others, and it's like, that's what we're all looking for, is like, for God's sake, can I just be myself? Can you just be comfortable being yourself around me? But now I've really gone on a tangent. What does any of that have to do with this kind of rigid geometry? If you guys aren't familiar, there's a style called De Stijl, which it means Dutch style, and De Stijl was a minimalist movement that was championed by Piet Mondrian, and he was trying to break down everything into its most minimal form. And so he was it was all rectilinear. He would use black lines on a white background and fill it in with the primary colors. So it was just the primary colors, black and white. And that's there's a similar thing going on here. I make a joke that I like to maximize my minimalism. Like, there's a degree to which this is a minimal artwork, and there's a degree to which it's beyond simply being minimalism. And I don't think that I would want it to be entirely minimal. This idea of like, what's the least I can give you? So I discussed before how the next step is to do this same pattern but on the black grid. So for recap, this pattern that I'm pulling the tape on right now is connected to the gray grid, and I'm going to repeat this pattern tied to the black grid, and that's going to reveal new geometries where we're going to see these two diamond patterns overlapping. You'll also notice how 3 diamonds make a hexagon, or there's almost a pair of hexagons with overlap. There's a million ways you could start to pick apart what's happening in this frame. And so that's what I'm really excited and curious to see for what's next, is what happens once I get this second pattern in. What can we see? And yeah, stay tuned with me and I will show you exactly what happens. So anyhow, I hope you've enjoyed my little rant, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Like if you want to be the first person to like one of my videos. That still hasn't happened for me yet, but you got me, right? All right.